Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Disc Golf Answer. I am Bobby Cool, Daddy Slick Breeze, and I have with me, well, you know what? I have with me, I want to say a team player, but I really just want to say an old friend. Really, I have an old friend on here that we're going to talk to, Mr. Chris Clemons. The exciting news is that he is back with Dynamic Discs starting in 2026. I'm sure if you guys follow us, you've seen the announcement we made. Super excited about that. But yeah, I reached out to him. I said, Chris, we got to get on. We got to get you on the show, learn a little bit more about what's been going on with you, and then, of course, learn about what you got going on in 2026. So first, Chris, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing good today. Me and Hannah are here in Indiana. We've been car shopping a little bit the last like week or so, but I have discs. I have discs that I just got, and there's so much snow on the ground, so I'm like, God. But tonight we have like a putting league, and it's a nice big indoor area where I can throw, and I did that 2 weeks ago, and so I'm excited for that. I'm itching to throw some plastic, but I'm doing good.
Awesome, awesome. Well, just for some of the new people out there, new listeners to us, let's kind of go back to when you first started in your disc golf career. And when I look up PDGA, the first thing I see is 2011, where you played an event, but then you didn't accept cash until 2014. So tell us a little bit about 2011 and what was going on with Chris Clemens during that time.
Man, 2011, that's so long ago. It used to be not that long ago, but now it's really getting up there. So 2011 for me, I graduated high school in 2006. I went off to college in Arkansas and I played baseball there. And so after that, like in 2010, I moved back to Joplin, Missouri, and I was kind of looking for something I could do for fun. I had played disc golf before with my buddies, and so I just started going out to the disc golf course by myself and playing a lot. And then like people got me involved in league. They're like every Tuesday night is league, and so I started playing more and more and doing like little fun stuff. And then like by 2011, I felt like my game had gotten good enough to where I could like start playing in tournaments and stuff like that. So my friends were super involved in the league. They ran the league, so they were like they had to hook up on tournaments. They were like, you can come with us, you can stay in the hotel with us. So it all worked out nice. And yeah, and I just fell in love with disc golf. I loved going like at the time, I think I was working doing debris cleanup um, for the city of Joplin after the tornado there in 2011. And so I would work, early in the morning until like 4 p.m. And then I would go to the disc golf course and be super tired by the end of the day. But every weekend, if I wasn't playing an event, I was wanting to like just go to Oklahoma, go to Kansas, go to Arkansas, anywhere in like a 3 or 4 hour radius, and just play like three different disc golf courses in a day. And so like that was awesome. And so like being able to now, it's kind of like that, but a little different.
Nice. So what was you looking back at early Chris Clemens? When you think back to that version of Chris, what would he be most surprised about in your career today?
Um, I think that just the level, like, for me personally, of course, like, getting better and being able to perform at big events and being on TV and stuff like that is always cool. But just seeing how far like disc golf has come, I think back in 2011, it was a different time and it was a different sport. Like I remember when I would get into it, I would go on Facebook and I would find like Paul Macbeth and Nico Castro, all the big people in pro disc golf at that time, and I'd add them as a friend and they would add me. And I'm like, oh, that's super cool. And so like disc golf then was like a lot smaller, a lot more niche. Like everybody knew everybody like personally. And I think now it's a little more, it's not as personal. So you will see, like on social media, you'll see comments about people and stuff, and they don't really know that person and they might not ever meet that person. But at that time, you actually did know everybody. And so I think just how big the sport has gotten, and it's been on ESPN and on CBS with the Pro Tour finals and stuff like that. It's just crazy to like back then. I would have never thought that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It has come a long way for sure. So, you started playing full seasons, around 2018, playing like 20, 25, 30 events in the year, probably more than that as I skimmed through your PDGA page. So, as far as like touring full time, what has touring taught you about yourself that casual players probably never see?
I think like back when before I toured, but I was playing at a high level. So I did a little bit in Joplin, and then when I moved to Kansas City in 2015, for that like couple years, it was a lot of practicing, just going out to different courses and just throwing in the field, putting, and then when it came time, a week before the event, every day I would go out and like practice that course, getting ready at Bad Rock Creek or Rosedale or whatever. And, but life on the road and touring, you're kind of like playing an event, and then Monday you're driving all day, and then you got like two, maybe three practice rounds. And so it's like a lot more quick turnaround. And so when your swing is feeling kind of weird, or when you're like in a slump, sometimes it can be tough to get out of it. Um, if you're one of those like local pros who have your job and stuff, like you have other things that kind of take up your time. And so, it's definitely a balance of like knowing yourself and kind of knowing like how you best react. Some people just want to play, play, play. And I'm kind of like that too. I feel like the more tournaments I play, the more like rust I get off, the more kinks I get out, the more I like learn and get where I want to be. Um, and I think that's why historically I've played better like at the end of the season the last couple months, because there's just so many events back to back to back. And so I just love that like repetition. And so you can get your practice in and just that repetition. But I mean, you do have to have time for chilling out and getting your mind right. That is super important, especially as you get older. When you're 20 years old, you can just throw all day, every day, and just party with your friends and do whatever you want. And the next day, you're like fresh and good to go. But as you get older, there's more responsibilities and more like things you have to like prepare your body and prepare mentally to do things. So, but I've loved it, and I love interacting with the fans. That's the best part of it for me.
So you spent it about mentioned about practice, and sometimes it's kind of can be hard while you're on the road. How do you get practice in while you're out traveling?
I think when I first started touring, those like first 2 years, 2018 and 2019, I had my like religious things. Like I wanted to practice, on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then I wanted to play the course, and then I was ready, because I knew like when you're doing field work, you can get so much more done preparing for a tournament, in my opinion, than like playing on the actual course. But that's if you kind of already know the course. And like if you're a local pro, you've probably played the course that you're going to play in the tournament quite a few times. And so like doing that field work and getting that putt right, going into that day, Saturday morning, when you're playing your C tier, B tier, and you got two rounds, like that you're going to be ready and you feel good. On the pro tour, it can be a little different. You can like prepare as much as you can, but some days you're just like, I don't know quite know how this is gonna go, so we're just gonna roll with it. And so yeah, like I remember when I would those first 2 years touring with Jordan Castro, there would be times where I'm like, I don't want to go to the course, let's go somewhere else, and I just want to like just practice and do field work and stuff like that.
Very cool. All right, so I'm gonna switch gears a little bit because I kind of want to talk about how this year happened. I was helping out with the team manage being well, we don't have a team manager for Dynamic Disc, so I thought I'd step in and help out. Seth had been doing some of the team manager type roles or duties, and I thought, you know what, let me help. So I had been involved in a lot of the negotiation, what's going on, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, literally, Chris, I wasn't even sure what was going on with anybody out there. And out of the blue, you sent me a text and said something to the effect of, if Didi is looking for someone new, you wanna come back to the discs you trust. And you don't even know how excited I was when I saw that when I saw that text. So tell me a little bit about, like, what had changed for you mentally or competitively that made you send that text?
I think, when I left DD 2 years ago, it was kind of by surprise to me. There was a lot of, like, change going on there, and, um and then, like, over the last 2 years, I felt with, like, Discraft, it was, like, a cool opportunity, but, like, I never quite jived with the discs. And for me, there were many times in the course where I'm like, man, I wish I had my defender. I wish I had like different discs, my judge. And I kept like feeling that way. And those are things like touring with Hannah, like I'm gonna, be talking to her about that all the time. And she was just like, you belong at DD, and like and I always felt that way. So it was always like, whenever you have your first love and then like you can't ever get away from, you always think about them and stuff like that. It was just like that. And so I had to like sit down and think about like what was best for me. And I was just like, I want to throw discs that I know and that I trust and that I love. And it gets me excited to throw them every day. Like I grab my bag and I'm like, I can't wait to throw my harp. I can't wait to throw my fuse and like see how they fly. And I felt like I kind of lost that a little bit over the last 2 years. Like I wasn't super excited to throw the discs I was throwing. And so I was just like, I want to throw Trilogy, and that's the way that I want to tour. Like I feel like that's how I can perform the best. Like that's the ultimate reason I play is because I want to perform and like challenge myself to like see how well I can do against other people. And so I know disc golf's changed over the years and there's a lot of like social media involved and like marketing and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like for me, the reason for playing is to see how good I can do, like personally, and to like challenge myself and then, try to beat the course. And if I happen to beat other people, great. And so that's like the ultimate reason. So I sat down and I was like, I'm gonna message Bobby because I know he's back at DD, and I was like, I'm gonna see what he has to say and just see what happens.
Nice. Well, I'm glad it turned out the way it did. It reminds me of when I came out to, I think, were you living in Kansas at the time when we did that little mini documentary, the art of getting better?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that was
yeah.
super fun. It was cold outside. I do remember that.
Yeah, it was cold. But yeah, I mean, even to this now, like you're saying, you're competing with yourself. You want to get better. It still kind of follows that same whole thing. And I remember we were like trying to figure out what the topic and the tone of the video would be. And you had said something about getting better or the art of getting better. And it was like, man, that's what we need to talk about. So it's always been your thing is getting better. Is it something that you, uh, that is motivating, or do you kinda wrestle with it? Do you get like, how frustrated do you get when you're not, quote, unquote, "feel like you're getting better"?
Um, I think like everybody's different, and like for me growing up, predominantly playing baseball, like baseball coaches, especially like in the Midwest, are historically like pretty tough on you. And I came from a pretty good baseball program in Joplin. Like we'd won multiple state championships. And so like being in that environment and seeing like all the hard work that you do during the week and during practice to like perform, like I learned that it's all about like the stuff that people don't see and like the preparation, there's very few players who are just like naturally gifted enough, like a Gannon Burr or whatever, but he still works super hard, um, that you can just go out and perform. And so for me, I with disc golf, I could kind of do my own thing. There's not a lot of like training regimen, and like everybody's different in disc golf. If you go search for golf, you can find multiple people to give you lessons and things like that. But in disc golf, it's more of like how you want to do it. And so like I fell in love with just practicing. I could be by myself and put my AirPods in, listen to music, and work on different things that I felt like I needed to work on. And so there are times, especially like putting, because I always do something like when I practice, I got to make like so many putts in a row before I leave. And if I get like super close and then I fail, I'll get like mad at myself. And I've been there for, an extra 45 minutes and I'm just like pissed at myself. But I feel like it drives me to like work harder and do more, and so I feel like in tournaments, you shouldn't get very mad at yourself. You should be pretty easy. You want to be cool, calm, and collected. But yeah, when I'm practicing, I'll get a little more upset if I'm not performing that the way I want to, because it helps motivate me, and that's why I like it. Like I don't really struggle with practicing and stuff like that because I found like what works for me, and everybody's different. And so like that's kind of why we made that video is because like I felt like it could help some people because everybody's practice is different, but ultimately like if you're having fun doing it and you are seeing results, in your weekly leagues or whatever, then I think that that's beneficial.
Nice. I'll have to remember to put a link to that video in the description of this,
Yeah.
episode so people can check that out because I still think it's very highly relevant, to what you have going on. And you said something about, you're hoping that the video would help people, and that's always something that I admired about you because you're very helpful. You've always been willing to help people when we were do clinics back in the day, we're, willing to teach people, and I think that's awesome. And then it's funny, can you say you get upset and you get mad and pissed, and I'm thinking, I don't know that I've ever seen you
Yeah. Right.
mad. So you seem like a pretty chill, even-tempered kind of guy, but I'm sure inside there, you're battling with yourself whenever you're not happy with what's going on. But so when it comes to the practicing and what do you think is something that I don't know if I want to say the casual player or maybe the player that's aspiring to become a pro touring player, what is something you think that holds them back? What have you seen or what have you experienced that's holding people back from maybe going to that next level?
Yeah, I think you know, maybe some people could get discouraged, if they're putting all this time into practice and they're only, throwing so far, or they put all this time into putting and then they miss a couple putts in their tournament. And so they might get a little discouraged and, they're like, all right, I'm not going to play tournaments for a couple months, and then they kind of like get out of it. And so I think for me personally, one of the biggest things that was helpful is that like I surrounded myself with people who had the same like motivation that I did. Kyle Webster, a lot of you old school people might know him. He like toured with Will Schusterick back in the day with Prodigy. Then he was on West Side. He was like the other guy who we were, neck and neck. We were always like at the time probably both 990 rated and just like pushing each other, but we were best friends too, but we both wanted to beat each other. And so like and all of our friends were the same. And so like surrounding yourself with people who aren't going to distract you away from like what you're trying to do, which at the time was getting as good as you can at disc golf and winning, every tournament around, I think is super important because like I think back to that time and I was also loving like table tennis. Like I would play a lot of table tennis and I was like looking for local leagues and stuff like that. Like I never like not like super serious, but disc golf, the way a lot of people start is they go out with their friends and just have fun. And then you kind of like get into it more and more and more. And that happens with a lot of different things, whether it's if you play cards like Magic the Gathering, you can go and play in tournaments and just little things. And so, like, but for me with disc golf, like all my friends were disc golfers and that's who I hung out with all the time. So I was like being pushed continuously to get better and to like achieve my dreams of like one day touring.
Nice. All right, let's jump back into you coming back to dynamic discs. So when the decision was made and we were like, okay, you're back at dynamic discs. Did you have a stash of trilogy discs sitting at the house ready to go?
I feel like there are a lot of pros who like keep a lot of discs. I know them. Andrew Presnell, he's got hundreds and hundreds of discs, but For me and Hannah, like we will like in the off season we'll stay at Hannah's dad's here in Indiana. And so like we don't have like if we had a house, you know, wherever, I probably would like keep stashes of discs. But when I left ED 2 years ago, we had a garage sale, and a lot of the locals in Indiana came and like picked through my stuff. And so I didn't keep very much stuff, but a lot of those locals, when I announced that I was coming back a couple weeks ago, they were like, "Hey man, I still got some of your stuff. Do you want to? You want to look at it?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do." And I'm not like because I know like even EMAC talking to him like and looking at your wall, like you have a lot of discs, you know, just hanging out there, and some are probably 10 years old, 20 years old. And
Yeah,
there are people who like to collect a lot of that old stuff. And I've never really been that way to collect a lot of discs. So I think discs are meant to fly. And so yeah, I'm kind of starting fresh. Like I got some stacks here of like just stuff that I ordered, some cool looking stuff that feels really good. But I do have hookups on some good stuff.
good. Well, name a few molds that were like you were just excited. You're like, okay, I can't wait to get those back in my hands and get them,
I
get
mean,
out and throw them.
number one is this guy right here. The Judge,
Yeah.
especially the moonshine ones, even after I left DD, I would have a lot of people come up to me and I'd be hanging out or, you know, signing or whatever. And they're like, man, I love this disc so much. And I signed a lot of my old verdicts and stuff like that. The first time I went to Europe, I signed quite a few of like my old Defenders that came out in 2018 or 2019. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and so like I'm like, man, and then every time you sign one, you like think about it, and you're like, man, those are pretty cool. So I think the judge was probably top of the list. And then I think the Bio Defender was a big weapon of mine, throwing big forehands. And then a felon, you know, there there's kind of a couple discs that fill that slot. You know, you have like your Firebird, you know, and there's people who love those and they love Sexton Firebirds and whatever. And so like with the Felon, it's the same. Like people love the Lucid X Felon or they love the old runs or the Ricky runs. And so like I just love the Felon. It was a big weapon of mine. That's something I felt like I was lacking a little bit over the last couple of years. Not throwing trilogy was my consistency on my forehands and like really trusting the disc and how it was going to come out of my hand and how it was going to fly. So it was specifically forehand disc for me. So Felon, Bio Defender, and then the putter, of course, because you putt on every single hole.
What are some of the new ones? What are the so I don't know. See, in the last 2 years, I'm sure we've come out with a handful. But are any of the ones that you're ready to test new ones?
Yeah, I know EMAC, he's sending me some stuff. I know there's like this Strive because when I left DD, I had like enforcers, which I use mainly for like my overstable backhands. Then I had defenders for overstable forehands or max distance. And then I had war horses as well. And so I'm looking for something that I can throw super far backhand. And I've been testing out some Raiders. And I know there's a lot of runs of Raiders over the years, but I was like, also there's like the Strive I've heard of. And then like there's also I love the Explorer, but I know they've come out with the Glory and the Honor, and I see a lot of people on Latitude throwing those. And so
Yeah,
are definitely intriguing to me.
nice. You actually had, I know I'm kind of jumping around, but when you say things, it makes me think of questions. So
Yeah.
you said stuff about like, coming back to discs that you were familiar with and you're excited about that. Do you, when you talk to other players and as they're deciding about making their move to different manufacturers, does that play a big role in their choices as far as like, I'm going to leave the discs that I really have grown to trust?
You know, I mean, I probably, you know, somebody like Andrew Presnell, who's been with Discraft for a long, long time. I
Yeah.
think he could adapt, especially because he mainly throws backhand. I think my throwing style is quite unique, and so my needs for like discs and how they fly and what they do and how they feel, I think is maybe a little different than some other people. Um, but there are discs like I know MVP, like they are historically kind of known for their discs being like super flat, and I like dome on my discs. And so I'm like, I
Mhm.
don't, it would probably be pretty hard to find like stuff from them that I could throw. And I never really thought about that before I left DD. And then after I did and being with another company for a couple of years, it it kind of opens your eyes, to the stuff that you have thrown, what you like and dislike, and you have that history of knowing what good runs are. And so, players kind of change every off season, it seems like, especially over the last like 5 years. And so Silas Schultz, he was on or on Discmania, and now he's going to MVP. And so like, but he's kind of a predominantly backhand guy. So usually there is a learning curve. And being on the pro tour, you really have to trust your disc. And there's so much OB everywhere. There's so much wind and elements that you play in. And so like really knowing your disc, and you don't really like learn a disc until you like throw that like super risky shot multiple times and it turns out good. Like if you try to throw that risky shot and then 1 out of 3 times, like it turns out terrible and it flips on you or hyzers too much or whatever, then you kind of like start second guessing that disc, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that the discs are bad quality. It's just that you're familiar with a certain mold, and and like you said, in those tricky situations, and you don't always get to practice the same courses over. When you go to a tournament, it's like you got to play the tournament, and then you move on to the next tournament. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was just curious if that how big of a part that played in people's decisions when they decide to move to different places. Okay, good. So back to the molds. What are some other some of your drivers and stuff that you're excited about?
I mean, when I went 2 weeks ago and I threw indoors because we got 14 inches of snow here, so I'm like, I don't want to lose anything.
Right.
Um, but just the couple throws that I've had with like the bio defender specifically, I'm like, oh my God. Like it just comes out so fast, so hard, and so like clean and easy. And then throwing the Explorer, it's just like easy distance. It just feels super good in the hand. And then I have an old Justice that I team stamped when I came to Emporia years and years ago. It was like a fusion one, and there's like very few of those. And like throwing that thing forehand and backhand, I'm like, ooh, that's really, really nice. Um, and then like getting a harp in my hands, like just the depth of it, I feel like it's a lot easier for me to control. Somebody just messaged me today on Instagram and asked me like, why would I throw a harp and a culprit? He was like, once I got the culprit, it kicked the harp out of the bag. And for me, I like backhanding the harp a lot because I feel like it's a little slower. It's a little easier to control on like super touchy shots. And the culprit's more like it's almost more of a mid and better for forehands and stuff like that. And so there's little like intricacies. Um, but honestly, like I'm so excited to just throw everything I have, like, and that's the fun part of it for me, and that like motivates me to get out there and practice and get better. It's just like, ooh, I want to try this. I want to try this.
Um, let's talk more about your touring and stuff like that. So over the years, how much have you seen? I mean, obviously, before we didn't have the Disc Golf Pro Tour, now we have the Disc Golf Pro Tour. What are some other big changes that you've noticed over the years as far as being a touring pro?
Yeah, I think seeing a lot of new faces. For me, like first touring in 2018 and then the COVID years, I'd say like 2020, 2021. That's kind of like in the middle of my touring career. And so like seeing so many new players that have came in from COVID. We go to our putting leagues every week here, and probably 90% of people are over the last 3 or 4 years since COVID. So that's like a big thing, because when I first started playing a lot of tournaments, especially a lot of the touring pros, in 28, 2019, have been playing for 10 years or so. There was very few, maybe like an Eagle McMahon or something, who kind of just like burst onto the scene out of nowhere. And so now it seems like every year there's these young kids, 18, 19 years old, who have just throw 600 feet and who've been playing since they were five. But this is the first time you're ever hearing about them, and they come out and they do really, really well. And back, in 2018, there wasn't as much money in the sport. And so I think you kind of had to make it on the tour. You kind of had to like earn your stripes, like coming up the ranks, and now I think there's a lot more players who have started, who, some players like even Ezra Aderhold, like he's, one of the best players in the world, and he has like 5 career wins or something like that. And back on the tour, for one of the best players, or back in 2018, one of the best players in the world only having 5 wins, you're like, what in the heck? What's going on there? And so like it's just a different thing, but it means disc golf is growing. It means that a lot more young kids are seeing that they can, make a living on the tour. And I think a lot more parents are willing to like, yeah, you can skip college for now and go see how you do on the tour. And back in the day, it wasn't quite like that as much, I don't think.
Yeah. What do you think is the hardest part of touring that, never shows up on coverage or on social media?
Oh man. I think just like the inconsistency of how your week could go. You can have a month where you play 3 events and they all go pretty smooth. You're staying with the same hosts you've stayed or at the same places you've stayed in years past. And then, sometimes there could be weather delays at an event, or you're staying somewhere new, or just, your car breaks down. Just there's inconsistencies there. Me and Hannah were actually talking like the other day, and she was telling me how she got her first car, and it was like a Honda Civic. And she was like, yeah. She's like, yeah, I remember I just paid like 7,000 cash for it straight up. I was like, you had $7,000 saved up? She's like, yeah. She was a manager at Wendy's. And she was like, it was easy to save because like you go to work every day and you know what you're going to get paid in 2 weeks. And so like on the tour, it's riskier. There's a lot more like chance taking. So, one month you could make $5,000, and another month you could make $500. And so it's definitely risky, and it can be frustrating at times, but it's fun and it's awesome. And the people on the tour are more than willing to help. We've had issues on the road, everybody does, and everybody's willing to help you and give you rides and stuff like that.
That's good. So how do you personally handle weeks that the results are not quite where because you and Hannah are doing this together, so maybe there's a week where things didn't turn out the way you thought it would. How do you guys handle that? How do you keep the grind
Yeah,
going?
I think over over the years it was kind of like for me like touring, I've had like ups and downs, and I've been doing it long enough that like some years are better than others and things like that. But for Hannah, she's like started out kind of from the very bottom out of nowhere, and she's like progressively gotten better and better and better. But like over those years, it was always funny because like if I played well in a tournament, Hannah would usually not play very well, and then like vice versa. Like she played well, and so it was like frustrating a little bit for one of us, but we are also like, well, at least like one of us is doing good, so like that's a good thing because we always want each other to do well. Um, but like there are weeks, especially for me, over the last couple of years where it is like super frustrating, and you question things. You're like, why isn't the things that have been working, over the last 10 years or whatever, why is it not working now? Am I not good enough anymore? Am I not working hard enough? Are people just better now? and so those are like things that cross your mind and you struggle with and you think about, and ultimately hard work beats talented players and just like keeping at that grind. And so like that's what I've always tried to do is just like put your head down and like going at it like you're going to have a good week. But I know for me personally over the last 2 years, like there's many times me and Hannah are sitting in the van and I didn't perform well. I missed cash by like one or something. And that's something that never really happened. I think I had like one of the longest cash streaks from like 2019 all the way to 2022 or something like that. And so that was like a new thing that like it was very frustrating, but you just have to like keep going. But I would just sit there and kind of be like, man, and just be super, super frustrated. And
Yeah.
so then I think having those thoughts over the last year and knowing like how that felt and knowing that to me, I ultimately had to be like, I still have it as a player. I'm still competitive, but I just didn't jive with the equipment I was using. I was just like, I think that like pushed me more and more to be like, I think that I want to change. And that's kind of where I came to you in the off season. Like I had to sit down for like 2 months and like really, really think about it. And I was like, that's what I want because ultimately I want to be able to perform and I don't want that excuse of, not quite trusting myself because that's the worst feeling ever is you're standing on a tee and you don't quite trust what's in your hand. You're like, I don't know how this is going to come out of my hand. I hope this is good. You're just hoping. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you want to be 100% confident that if you throw it the way you intend to, it's going to be good. And I think that's what drives me and that's why I love practicing so much.
Do you feel like over so if you think back to your early career and you mentioned like these young kids coming in, all this new talent, do you feel pressure differently now than you did earlier in your career?
No, I don't think so. And I think that when there's been like pressure moments like the definition of pressure, is something that like I think is a good thing. I know that, one of the first times I won an A tier in Joplin, like Ron Converse, he beat me the year before in the A tier. I was leading going into the final round and I like felt that pressure. I was just like, I don't know how this is gonna go. I hope I can beat him. I hope I play good today. And so like the next year, I had the mentality of like, I'm going to beat him. I'm going to play so good that nothing he can do will let him beat me. And so like you learn how to perform under those moments and not like when I'm having that pressure, that means that I'm doing good and that's good. And so I look at it as a blessing. I know for like Hannah, over the years, especially this last season, like she played really, really well and, was on lead card a lot and stuff. And so that is pressure moments and she can get like, I can tell in the morning if she's like feeling that because she's like, I can barely eat and stuff like that. And like that happens. But like over time, the more you do it, the better you get. And ultimately, like that's a good thing. I'd rather have all the pressure in the world and everybody staring at me and like fail than like being on the third to last card and you feel like you're not going to make cash. Like it's a better
Mhm.
feeling to have that pressure and have that opportunity to do it because if you pull it off, it's awesome.
There you go. I love it. How does what's it like in the car ride home or back to wherever you guys are staying when you both are not doing really well? How do you guys handle the pressure together, being both competitors?
Yeah, I think when Hannah first started touring, she came because she didn't play a whole lot of events, She went and played in her local leagues and went and played with friends a lot and stuff, but she was just really good. And so she didn't come from like a sports background necessarily. Like she didn't play anything in high school and stuff like that. So she like I don't think she knew like kind of like how to practice to like get better, like with a vision, like I want to work on this today and have that vision to like do it. And you have to be like regimented. And so like teaching are those things over the year, like, that's helped their improvement. And so like usually, when we're driving our long drive, we're driving from Texas to Vegas or wherever, we have tons of time to talk. We'll talk about like the things that we struggled with and how we want to get better at them. And sometimes we'll plan, we'll be like, all right, we have 2 days to get to wherever we're going, and tomorrow we're gonna stop and we're not gonna go to the course, we're gonna go here and we're gonna just practice putt, and we like do it together and like play games together to get better. And so I think like always having that plan and like that vision to like get better and work on things, like not giving up and just accepting, that you played poorly, is like that can be tough. And if you do that, you're pretty much like giving up on yourself. And it's like if you play good, it's just kind of random chance. And I want all the control I have to put myself in the best position to like perform. And so those are the things that we talk about. It's just like practicing harder, doing more things to get better, maybe trying some new discs that you need and stuff like that.
Hmm. So the day I posted about you coming to Dynamic Discs, I actually teased out a little emoji, the lemon emoji, and a lot of people understood what was happening and they were excited. And then when you finally posted the picture of you and said that you were back at Dynamic Discs, it was overwhelmingly positive, which is awesome. But tell me how that made you feel when you saw the positive. I think even on Reddit, it was some great comments on Reddit, on Facebook and Instagram. How did that make you feel?
Yeah, it was awesome. I know like players moving is always like an interesting thing, and people always have their like thoughts on it and things like that. And but I know there's like one comment that has stuck with me, and it was saying like Clemens is back with DD. He's like disc golf is coming back. Like disc golf is like maybe he's been a fan for a long time and he's been in disc golf and following the pro scene for years and years. And so like to me, disc golf has changed a lot over the years. And, a lot of us pros, like we reminisce, like I do with Oakley and AJ Risley and stuff about the good old days and things like that. And so, like, I think that fan, like, saw that, and I know that DD was like one of the early, uh, companies that were like doing the social media thing and making their players like super personable and doing those clinics and having us available and stuff, and they like set the tone for that, and we had like an awesome team. And so like I always have that like feeling of that. um and so it was kind of like surreal in a way. And then I think the day that we posted it, it was on a Thursday, and that's when we went to the putting league, and I just went off by myself and I threw a bunch of discs, just practicing, and I was throwing explorers and anvils and justice and stuff like that. And I kind of almost teared up, and I was just like, man, this feels so good, and it just like feels right. It's funny because like I put on this shirt today for the first time, and I like put it on and looked at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, man, I look good. This feels right. And I like walked out of there, and I was like looking at Hannah, and I was like, what do you think about this? And she was like, that looks right to me. And I was like, yep, it does to me too.
Awesome, good for her. I'm glad that I mean, not that I would expect that she wouldn't be, but I mean, it's nice that you have someone that's in the disc golf world that's very supportive of you. So I think that's awesome. Okay, so if you don't know, our listeners, I'm talking to you. He's a lefty. This is Chris Clemons, a left-handed, and we have Zach Melton, who's left-handed. We have Andrew Anselmo, who just recently highest rated lefty. At one point, I can't remember what year you were the highest rated lefty as well.
Yep.
And then, oh god, I'm gonna get in trouble. Who is it?
Wyatt
Wyatt.
Mahoney.
Wyatt. That's right. Wyatt's another
Yep.
lefty. And what was funny is that when I was talking to Seth, and he had said Anthony had, when the news came out about Anthony getting highest rated. Then I told Seth, I was like, oh yeah, and then Chris Clemens on there, and he was like, yeah, we have four. We have four like big names that are lefties, and so it's like we got to do something silly or fun or something with left-handed discs or something like that. But to my question though is, do you think being left-handed has shaped how you see yourself in disc golf since you're a smaller percentage as far as players that are out there?
Yeah, I think there's times on a course when I'm playing it to where I'm like, man, it'd be nice to not have to throw this 450-foot forehand and I could throw a backhand to be a little more consistent, a little better in the wind. But honestly, like over the years, I realize like it's a blessing and like I'm pretty lucky to be because there's so few of us. And so if there's like me and Melton, Nathan Queen, Austin Turner, who have been on the tour for years. And so, like, I know every tournament people will come up and be like, and they probably do it to them too, man, you're my favorite lefty. And I was like, yes, I'm one out of four, you know? I was like, that's good odds. But I think it's a blessing because me throwing big forehands, having my hair, being left-handed, like it kind of separates me from other touring pros. So it's probably helped me gain fans, whereas if I was right-handed, I'd probably, be easier to like miss at a tournament. But I know every left-handed player probably gravitates towards one of us left-handed players, and if it's me, great. And so I think that definitely helps, even if it's a small percentage. I think it definitely helps being left-handed. I think it's awesome. I've always loved it throughout my whole life. Like in sports in general, like it's pretty cool to be left-handed. Baseball's very advantageous, even in basketball, which I used to play too. And so I think it's a blessing.
What advice would you give your 2017 self, right when you started to really get out there and start touring?
Ooh, ooh, that's a good one. I know at that time I I just wanted a chance to be on the tour because I know in 2017 I was not touring. I was living in Kansas City working at the Dynamic Disc store there at Rosedale, and then also working in healthcare. And I was just practicing, and I played GBO early in the year and ended up getting third because they canceled the last round. And that was pretty awesome. Thank you for the weather for that. Because I was like, I think Macbeth won that, and I was like two strokes behind him, but I was like tied with Sexton and Ricky or like Simon or something like that. And I was like,
Mhm.
at the time, looking back on it, I was like, I I may have played well in the rain there and stuff like that, but third is probably pretty good. And so I was like pretty happy with that. And so like I knew that I could compete, with the best in the world, like if I got the opportunity. And so like that's all I really wanted in 2018 was like that opportunity to compete with the best in the world. And I feel like I handled it well. Like I learned things over the years, but I don't think anything in like my practice and, who, of course, people change over time, but like how I've approached the game, I don't think it's changed that much. And I feel like that's why I've been able to be, pretty successful doing it all these years later. And so, like, maybe just enjoying the moment more. Like you never know. Like even 2019 USDGC, the one that I almost won. Like I remember after it happened, I was happy. I wasn't upset with myself, but just because I was like, I'm gonna get this opportunity again. But all these years later, I haven't been that close, at USDGC, and so relishing those moments when you have them I think would be some advice I give to myself because, as a competitor, like you're always trying to stay super focused and stay in that moment. And I think for me personally, after all these years, like that's one of my main goals is to be coming down, 17 or 18 at a pro tour event, a world's USDGC, and like know that you've already won or throw that like final upshot to park it and all you have to do is tap in and then like all that wave of emotion can hit you and you can like relish it while you're still like playing your round. I think that would be super awesome.
Yeah, that'd be great. So kind of along that mindset, uh, topic, what's something that you care less about now that you used to care a lot about back in the day?
Uh, that's a really good question. I mean, what do I care less about? I mean, maybe I feel like there's things that I care more about, like as far as like, diet and stuff like that. Less about um maybe like getting as many practice rounds on a course
Hmm,
as I like could. Since I've played them for so many years and I like know a lot of the courses inside and out. Uh, you know, when I first went on tour, like I've seen all of them on Jomez and stuff like that, Vermont and Maple Hill and stuff like that, but I had never played them. And so like you can watch it so much, but you actually have to play it and see how you play the hole. And so I think, but over the years, like I've learned that you come back to a course that you've been to 5 times and you're like, "I knew exactly what I was throwing on this hole. I was throwing this felon right here, and it was perfect." And so then you do it again and you're like, "Alright, nice." Or if you don't have that disc anymore and you're like, "Oh, man, what am I gonna do?" If the felon you have is, like, a little more stable, a little less stable, you start thinking like, "Do I have anything that I could put in my bag specifically for this hole?" And so I think getting less practice rounds, like, I don't need as many on the specific course. Uh, I guess that would be what I care less about.
yeah, nice. All right, now as we head into the 2026 season, what are you trying to protect mentally?
What am I trying to protect? Honestly, like, specifically the last year was one of the hardest that I ever had on tour. Not performing at the level that I felt like I was capable of, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but I've had those times, over the years. There's been tournaments or a span of tournaments where I didn't perform how I wanted to, but I was always able to like come back from that mentally and always able to have a good tournament, to stop that like span. And so then I can build on that. And there were so many times over the last year where was just telling Hannah, I was just like, I just want one good round. Like that's all I want. Cause I felt like I could do like, I'd have a good like 12 holes. And then I would mess up on like 2 or 3 holes and it just completely tanks your round. And over the years, like I've always been very consistent. Like I might not shoot the hottest round, but I might not shoot that like 12 under, but I was like consistently shooting 7 or 8 under. And then I would put myself in position to have that hot round, by Sunday and put myself in contention. And so I like struggle with that a lot. And so I had to break it down to basics and be like, I just want one good round, not even necessarily a good tournament. And so I I don't I mean, I'm sure it'll happen, at some point this year, everybody has ups and downs and you struggle a little bit. But just staying like mentally strong and having that like trust in yourself that you can perform the way that you want to, if you put in the work. And I'm very excited to do that. That was a lot of my reason for coming to DD was that I felt like I just lost confidence over the last 2 years, and I'm like a confidence player, you gotta believe in yourself at the end of the day, and it's hard to perform if you don't. And so, like, I knew that I believed in myself, earlier in my career, and I was like, I wanted that feeling again so I could perform the way I want.
Nice. And I've never known you as someone that really like puts a lot of pressure or stress on yourself about when you consider what other people think about you. I think that's great, right, about you. But here's kind of a deep question, I guess. When it's all said and done, when disc golf is done for you, right? What do you hope people would say about you?
I think when being a fan of sports over the years and you look at people's legacy and things like that. You take somebody like Michael Jordan, who was the ultimate winner, even at the expense of maybe not being the nicest dude or, whatever stuff like that. Like people do respect him for that. But for me personally, I want to be somebody that other touring players always enjoyed playing with, whether I played good or played bad. Somebody that fans like they can show their 5-year-old, 10-year-old or whatever and be like, see, like I'm a fan of him, because like he always carries himself well on the course. I've always had good interactions with him off the course. I think for me, that's my biggest legacy, like in disc golf and in life in general, is just like being a person that other people can like count on and that other people want to be around and like feel good about being around and, talking to, or just, yeah, just that feeling of that people, it's not like me, I'm sure there's people that don't like me for whatever reason, but does people like respect that I was a professional on and off the
Oh,
course and that I, gave it my all, even if it's tough and just always like fought and to get better. And I love something that I was super excited about also, and I guess this kind of ties it in. Um when I was on DD, especially early in my touring career, like they always had junior worlds in Emporia. And so I loved going to junior worlds and connecting with all the kids and seeing them just having fun playing disc golf. And just like that was always super fun for me. And so, like, seeing Wyatt Mahoney, Anthony Anselmo, Carter Aarons, who's on the tour now, like seeing those kids when they were like 12 years old and having fun and seeing the growth that they've been able to put into their game and be able to achieve what they've wanted. Like, I think that that's awesome. And so I've always been very excited about that and like the future of disc golf, having more of those young kids getting into it. And so I think, yeah, like for me, my legacy, I want to be like helping younger people get into disc golf and yeah, and their parents being like, yeah, man, he's a good role model.
I like that. I like what you said. Something that I saw a video that touched me a little bit because I do tend to try to be the nice guy, and I do worry, of course, someone who's on video all the time, I'm thinking, do people like me, right? But the thing you said was, there are going to be people that don't like you, but hopefully they at least respect you and what you're trying to achieve. And that's something that I saw in the video was like, don't worry about being liked, but just make sure you do things so you're at least respected. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: right now, are you having fun?
Yeah. I am having a lot of fun. We're preparing here in Indiana. We're gonna be leaving for Florida in
Oh, ooh,
like couple weeks now. It's getting pretty close, and I'm getting super excited about it. We're getting a new vehicle to tour in, and I think we looked at a tournament that I think Tyler Searle's running down in Florida,
ooh,
and he's been one of the people. He's helped me a lot over the years, getting discs and stuff like that, and he's a super awesome dude, super awesome TD. And so I'm getting excited to play. I think we're gonna try to play his event down there. And so yeah, I'm just having fun. And like in the time that I have where I'm like not disc golfing and stuff like that, like I like to game a little bit on the Xbox. And so I've been playing like Arc Raiders with my buddies, and I'll play Magic the Gathering on my phone. And so yeah, like in general, I'm having fun for sure.
good, good. Well, Chris, I appreciate you being on the show. I always love working with you, and I am very happy and excited about working with you in 2026. But I appreciate you being on the show, sharing a little bit about what you got going on, a little bit about your life, and of course, I wish you the best. And I'm sure this, I mean, I absolutely know this will not be the last time you and I talk. So, but I appreciate you, Chris, very much so.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. I appreciate your service. You're the man. I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back talking with you. and it feels good. And I can't wait to see you on the road too. Hopefully, you can make it out
Yeah,
to some events.
absolutely. We should probably tell people the story about that. Thank you for your service joke.
No, we'll leave them guessing on what it means.
We'll let him guessing. Okay, we'll have to tell it on
Yeah.
another episode or something. So, all right.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate you, Chris. Have a good one.
See ya.